The biggest problem with your negative self-talk is actually something called cognitive fusion. So cognitive fusion has you believing all of your negative self-talk, and then cognitive fusion actually gets in the way when you are beginning to work on changing how you think. And I believe that understanding this can actually change your life. So in working with people over 20 years as a psychotherapist, I saw this issue of the cognitive fusion both causing the problem, making the problem worse, and then getting in the way of fixing the problem. And I think you'll understand this very quickly once I explain what I mean. And this will also point towards the solution here. So cognitive fusion is when we are totally blended with our thoughts, opinions, beliefs. There's no distance from them. There's no perspective. We're just totally in them. And when you have cognitive fusion with negative self-talk, then our cognitions become our entire identity. The way we speak to ourselves is totally entangled with who we feel we are. So fusion is a word that goes back, I think, to like the 1500s. And initially it meant kind of blending together, mixing together. So distinct items being united. And the term cognitions is often translated as thoughts, right? And I've done that myself in my videos, to be honest. But cognition actually really means more of our thoughts, our way of seeing the world. It includes our experiences and our senses. It's kind of the processes of our thinking brain. So this fusion with our negative self-talk really makes our lives miserable. Because yes, if we had the negative self-talk, but we weren't really fused with it, if we didn't really believe it, if we could separate from it, it wouldn't bother us as much. We still wouldn't like it. It still might be annoying, but it wouldn't drag us down, impact how we behave, right? Hold us back from certain experiences or create reactivity in us that then makes situations worse, right? Our negative self-talk does all that. It tells us not to go for things we would like to go for, and it causes us to have pretty extreme reactions sometimes, whether you are extreme by withdrawing and disappearing or by attacking, right? We can be extreme in different ways, but the negative self-talk can really fuel that because we're fused with it. And I am going to move towards solution, so stay with me. But when people first start working on their negative self-talk, what happens is that they use the same negative concepts about themselves to criticize themselves for negative self-talk. And what I found working with people is that very often they wouldn't be aware of it. So let me give you a couple of examples. So a client of mine who is actually quite successful in business had a negative core belief of I'm stupid. And he had grown up in a family that was very academically oriented, and he was not academically oriented. So he grew up being told that he was stupid or treated as if he was. So as we began to work on this, and he began to become aware of how often he was criticizing himself with something along the theme of I'm stupid, he was able to separate a little bit from the thought and see it. But he then got frustrated at how often that thought came up over and over and over. And then he would say things to me when we would meet. I can't believe I'm still repeating that refrain. That is just so stupid that I'm 45 years old and I'm still telling myself this thing that I learned as a child that I know isn't true. Like, why am I so dumb that I'm doing that? And I'd be like, do you realize you're criticizing yourself with the same cognition? So this is what happens until we really begin to heal from these negative core beliefs, is that you begin to criticize yourself for having these repetitive thoughts. You criticize yourself for having this negative self-talk. You get frustrated and angry at yourself that you can't stop it. So I had another client whose core belief was I'm defective. And she also was able to identify where this came from when she was younger. And it was a little harder for her to separate initially from that and realize, no, I'm not defective. Like that one was a little bit more oomph in there. But when she began to work on changing her negative self-talk, she'd be so frustrated at herself. She'd be like, what is wrong with me that I can't change this? And in that sentence, what is wrong with me? There's the implication that you're defective. So I want you to be aware of the layers of the negative self-talk so that when you begin to try to change your negative self-talk, correct yourself nicely with compassion to be able to say, wow, there you go again. This is how ingrained it is. It's really hard that this keeps coming up for you over and over. But you know what? It makes sense. Given that you grew up with a negative core belief because of stuff outside of your control that happened to you when you were very young and your brain was just forming, it's going to take a long time for this type of thinking to go away. So responding to yourself with care and concern and compassion is actually what's going to help that inner critic calm down, relax a little bit. Now, I know you're saying, how do I do that when I don't feel compassion for myself? How do I feel that? How do I do it? And I don't want to fool you. This takes some work. But working on your negative core belief, where it came from, why it arose, having compassion for yourself within that situation is extremely important. And I work with this concept in all the online programs I have. And I'm actually going live with a new program in November, beginning of November, 3 sessions over 3 weeks, designed to give you a boom breakthrough transformation about your negative core beliefs. Now, there are many ways to work on this concept. Therapy, something called EMDR therapy. You can Google it. I have videos on it. If you go the CBT route, I would go with a trauma-informed therapist because I don't feel that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, always gets to the root of this. So there's definitely other ways to work on it, but I believe this program will be like a kickstart, like a real breakthrough, aha, this is why I've been stuck. So you can see I put the picture of the program here on the screen along with the website. So check it out. The link will be in the description. I really hope to see you there because for both of these clients that I mentioned, for them to begin to be able to speak to themselves with compassion and to be able to calm their negative self-talk with a compassionate voice, they first needed to develop compassion for what they went through as children. They had to understand exactly why those cognitions got so deeply embedded in their brain. And this is not in any way about blaming parents, because I guarantee you, if you had parents who did this, it had been done to them and to the ones before and to the ones before. Like, this stuff is intergenerational, it's extremely unfortunate, and it impacts a lot of us, if not most of us, in one way or another. So I used to always say to people, this is like a fact-finding mission, not a fault-finding. We are not looking for who to blame here. I don't think that's helpful for anybody's healing, to be honest. You're looking for the facts of what happened and the understanding of how what happened would impact the child's brain and why we develop this inner voice. I have a video on inner critics that I released a couple of weeks ago, and in there I talk about how that inner critic developed to protect you. It developed to protect your relationship with your caregivers, which you needed for survival. So it's a different way of thinking about that inner critic than most of the stuff you'll read or see online. So anyway, if you do the work with me or you do it with somebody else, or you can do this on your own. It's hard to do on your own because seeing those layers of negative thought, because it can go from one layer to another, right, can be really hard to do for yourself. But however you approach this work, I encourage you to do it because you are worth it. Okay, see you next week.